Welcome back to New Persuasive Words. I'm Scott Jones.
And I'm Bill Bohr.
Bill,
And we're having trouble with the way I look. I mean, that could be partially it's because of the way I look.
I'm not having trouble with the way you look. I accept everybody.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing about you. How are you doing, Scott, today?
I'm wonderful. It's my favorite day of the liturgical year.
You do. You like this day a lot. We have talked about this before, and it's one of the great neglected holidays of holy days of, at least in Protestantism. It's a special day in Catholicism. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a great day. It's an interesting day. I would say it's a day that completes and gives meaning. But before we get on to this, what should we? I mean, look, before we delve right into deep theological, weighty, existential matters that shape our existence religiously, spiritually, philosophically, theologically.
Look at you, man. You're on a roll.
What else is going on? I mean, we have such an interesting country right now. You know,
yeah, it is. We haven't talked about this for a while, and you
Elon
know what?
Musk does not like the big, beautiful bill. Okay, the bill is so great. Okay, it's so fantastic. But Elon says, "Look, I think it can be beautiful or big, but not both." So.
Yeah, so he's out. He has left the fold.
Yeah, he's well, I mean, it's interesting. I think if I were Trump, I would listen more to Steve Bannon because Trump won people making less than
for political reasons.
Fashion too. I think he looks better.
I mean, how many shirts do you have? Just two.
Well, for policy too. For policy too. That would be. Look, I mean, I've heard Bannon say on multiple platforms he's for increasing taxes on the wealthy. I've heard him put higher tax brackets, increasing a new tax bracket for the super wealthy, all sorts of things, because he's an actual populist, right? And so he, I mean, part of the reason you can't let people into the country, right, is because you got to keep the goods for the nativists, sons and daughters. But at least there, Trump won people making under $50,000 a year. He didn't win them by massive, not the biggest landslide like we've ever seen. Okay, no, I mean it wasn't, but he did win them, right? And I mean that's part of the shifting.
This bill kills them.
Exactly. I mean this is what's so ludicrous. Why when you have for the first time in recent memory gained ground. Right, you've gained ground into the other team's base, right? You're deep inside there, in the red zone. You're pushing. Why would you at this point go back to supply side Reaganism, right? Like it's just fascinating, right? That there's no sense of dance with the one that brought you.
No. And I think, I mean, who knows what's going to happen before that? But this is how these kind of folks always ultimately self-destruct, right? Now they often can take millions of people with them, but they do self-destruct. Yeah, it's. I mean, and when you start messing with the bond market, that's really serious.
Remember what the Raging Cajun said. Right, Carnival said, "Man, I'd like to in the next life be reincarnated as the bond market." I mean that's what we need. We need the bond market, dude. I mean, we need the bond market.
No, it's there's all kinds of things about to just crash. I mean, it's an interesting.
By the way, did you see that a guy got fired from Doge because he admitted that he looked into Veterans Affairs and it's actually pretty efficient?
I didn't see that.
They got rid of him.
I did not say that shit.
You're out.
Yeah, and your favorite lawyer judge just got sworn in to be the acting.
Such a lovely person.
Oh my gosh.
Gosh.
And my favorite, I don't know, it's hard to pick a favorite, but the pardoning of a killer for hire gang leader in Chicago. That's remarkable. I don't know how law enforcement continues to support him. That one that's a counterintuitive one if there ever was one. But at any rate, now the beat goes on and it is syncopated. That's for sure.
It's not great. You say that also that Trump, the reporting that I've seen, which seems reliable to me, Trump asked Cotter for the plane. They didn't offer. He was like, he said, like, can you give me a plane or something? Like, it was not a.
And then that.
And then they. So I was saw on Facebook. They brought out, somebody surfaced, I think, footage from the 2016 campaign trail where Trump was on some interview saying how bad Cotter was, and they're paying people off and politicians and influence. So great. Yeah, it's so great. No. The whole thing is so great.
Yeah, it is. It is. By the way, I want to give a shout out to Oklahoma State Thunder. It is one of the most fascinating basketball. It is changing the game, and we have a friend of the show who is in Oklahoma, our good Baptist pastor friend. We sometimes question who he hangs out with, but nonetheless, I want to give a shout out to the Oklahoma City Thunder, which to me is one of the most entertaining and fascinating basketball things to watch for a long time. So good for you all out there. Yeah, I know you. This is a virtue you have that I don't have. You can be detached from the sports world, but I do want to say it. And also, hey, kudos to Philadelphia. The tush push is still in. The evil
That's
empire.
What we need. That's what we need.
The evil empire tried to get it banned, but it lived for another season.
Just for those of you who are not sports fans, it's not an illicit practice. This is a way to get somebody over the yard line for the first down or for the touchdown, where you can, you push the quarter, but you actually physically, like a battering ram,
like a rugby play.
It's amazing. It's utterly.
Eagles have perfected it, and people are complaining because they can't do it. Matter of fact, the Buffalo Bills lost a game because they couldn't. They have a guy who's bigger than the Eagles quarterback, but they couldn't figure out how to do it. So anyway, I thought you would have a T-shirt by now. There are T-shirts being made in Philadelphia about this.
I have not been outside today, so I haven't seen. Was I outside? I'm trying to think. No, I don't think I left the house today yet.
Oh, right.
I was on the porch, but I didn't. Which is how I like it. If I could have every day like this, no leaving the house. It's fantastic. Just here.
You're like, remember you made, I saw it on reruns too, but Burgess Meredith, the original Penguin. Was in a Twilight Zone episode, and he loved books, and he didn't like people. And so he wakes up and the nuclear wars happen, and he's the only survivor. And all that's left of him, and there's no people left and just books. He has really bad eyesight, and he trips and breaks his glasses. So this show ends with him weeping on the steps. And,
never leave. Never leave.
Never leave, right? Never leave.
Why? It's over. I
don't know why you never leaving your house made me think of Burgess Meredith in a Twilight Zone.
Great actor.
You could have been. You should have been. You should have been a Twilight. Oh yeah, that's great.
He was Mickey.
Oh, he was awesome in Rocky.
He was amazing.
Oh my God.
Yeah, Burgess Meredith, amazing in Rocky, and yeah.
Oh no, I mean, I think he made the movie. That was my my favorite character.
Yeah, so yeah, there you go, Bill. Lots going on in the country. We have is the bromance over? We have Stephen Miller's girlfriend or wife, I guess.
Wife. He's married.
Wife. Yeah, is leaving the White House to go work for Elon.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, well,
okay,
that's a trade up in a alternative universe. By the way, we need to honor one of our a theologian that you introduced me to in a serious way, who passed away recently.
Yeah, Brian Garish was great theologian. We spent several episodes. You can go back and look at our Reformation episodes. A couple of years ago, we read Jensen and Garish was It was that short systematics is so great. And
Actually, that was probably seminary level podcasting there.
seminary level podcasting. Yeah, without
you and
fewer
I enjoyed.
heresies.
I don't know if anybody else listened to it, but
fewer heresies than many seminaries. More rigorous reading lists than
definitely more rigorous reading lists. Right. And no grade inflation in the school of Scott and Bill.
No grade inflation. No grade. It's a big, beautiful podcast. Yeah, big and beautiful. It's so great that it's named the Big Beautiful Bill.
Of course.
And
I actually saw a congresswoman meeting with her constituencies and say, "We just passed it." She's calling it a big, beautiful bill, and the whole crowd starts booing her, and she wasn't happy about that. But anyway, enough of that stuff.
Yeah,
that was a great thing. That was a great thing about being in Italy.
That you weren't inundated with
that stuff, right? He was there. It was enough of it, but not every other.
By the way, you know what's great about Trump is he doesn't know what's gotten into Putin. It's really. I don't know what I don't like it. He's like shooting missiles. Okay. I don't like it. I'm saying Vladimir, stop. I don't like it. I'm like, this is reminiscent. Remember when George Bush said, "Man, I looked into the man's eyes and I saw the man's soul." McCain said, "I look in the eyes, I see 3 letters, K, G, and B."
Oh my gosh. We could use John McCain, but I don't know. He would be a lone voice. Look, he'd go the way of Mitt Romney, that's for sure.
Yeah, I remember what he said when they asked him about Iran. He said, "What's that Beach Boy song? Bam, 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 Iran." Gesticulating. John McCain. Yeah, he was a fireball.
Interesting guy. All right.
I like my war heroes not captured. Okay.
Oh, I hated that. That alone said America had lost its soul, but that didn't cost him. Anyway, but
there's no basement, Bill. There's no basement.
There is no basement.
No.
There is no
basement in sight. It can only get lower.
Yes, it can.
Really. Although you know what I do see sometimes? They post on Facebook, I guess. I think it's on Facebook. I see it or something. The worship services they have in the White House. They have these praise and worship services. Tell you what, Bill, not bad. Some not bad guitar playing.
Oh well, yeah.
The worship leaders, not terrible. Yeah. A couple people on the acoustic guitar, they sing the praise songs.
Yeah. There we go. Nice.
Yeah. Big, beautiful worship services. We love that.
Right.
Bill, it's Ascension Day. We're recording on Ascension Day. Some of you will listen to this on Ascension Day. Some of you will listen maybe the day after or 2 days after. So maybe they'll celebrate the Ascension in your church this coming Sunday, commemorate it.
We are at First Congregational Church.
I want to read to you from a friend of the show, Ben DeHart.
Oh, nice.
On his Substack. He raises this question. Why celebrate Ascension Day? Jesus has left. It feels like an annual send-off for someone we love who's far away. How is that good news? It's a question I've heard and one I've wrestled with. Christmas and Easter are clear joys. Pentecost brings palpable power. But Ascension, it can feel like a holy disappearance, a lingering question mark. I understand that ache. Having moved city several times, I know those heavy goodbyes. Meaningful, yes, but tinged with sorrow. I wouldn't ask faraway friends to commemorate my departure every year. So why mark Jesus leaving with joy? Because the Ascension isn't a departure at all. It's the fulfillment of the incarnation. In Jesus, God became human. In the Ascension, humanity is taken up into God. That very human body, born in a manger, familiar with dusty roads, laid in a tomb, now enters heaven. He doesn't shed his flesh. He glorifies it, takes it with him. In doing so, he draws us into the very life of God. What looked like a departure is actually the climax of God's upside down work. The very flesh he took up is now exalted.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And I think he really also summarizes some of the best piety of the East, right?
Yeah,
Certainly,
yeah.
certainly important. I mean, I think it's important for John Calvin in his Christology, but I actually think it probably, I think what Ben says there, it's as important, if not more important, for anthropology, right? And one of the things I was talking to, I do a men's Bible study, and we look at the text every week before I preach it, and this idea of the mythology of the ancient world, that he actually descends to the bottom of existence, and then he ascends and goes through all the created order, all levels of being, and therefore everything's redeemed.
He descended before 2024. Basement's lower.
He might have to come back.
Yeah, the basement is lower.
I've heard Dante's added a few new levels of hell.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, but no, I think
I
Ben
like my
nailed.
poets not Italian. Okay, I like a nice American. We're making poetry great again. Okay,
Right,
the
right,
people that'll be in the levels of hell will be the fake news media, the Democrats, the people that came up with the Russia hoax. Very bad.
right, and and the Heavenly Choir will be led by Kid Rock.
Kid Rock.
What a one-trick pony that is. But
I
anyway,
mean, yeah, not
not
my
not
cup of tea.
no, no. But I do think, getting back, Ben, I think, says it beautifully, and I think this idea, and you tied in. I mean, I alluded to the Ephesians passage about the ascending and the descending, but then the Hebrews passage about that, the idea that we have someone who was made like us in every way, who knows our weaknesses, and now, positionally is in the right hand, at the right hand of the Father. I think it's the metaphor of or the analogy of Jesus being the high priest. I guess maybe it's not even an analogy. I mean, I think it's certainly priestly Christology is part of the story. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a reality that, remember I was preaching in Levittown, Pennsylvania years ago, and I was preaching on Ascension on the Sunday after the Ascension. And it's like the one, like, remember I just read something on the Ascension, so I was excited. Read Doug Farrow or something, Ascension and Ecclesia, which is a great book. But I was trying to make sense of this thing, and Levittown is, it's an earthy place. But I remember saying, I was preaching like a couple weeks in a row because the person was on vacation, and I said, "Let me tell you what Ascension Day means." I mean, it's like, you feel better when somebody's like, people say things in Philadelphia like, "Hey, I got this. It fell off the truck." Right? Like the 5-finger discount, or what they'll say is, "Don't worry about it. I got a guy.
I got a guy.
I got a guy. Don't worry. I get you a deal on this, or I get you, or don't worry. I can get you. I got a guy." I said, "You know what it means? The Ascension means eternally in heaven. In this, we've got a guy." And the next week, somebody was like, "I remember. I got a guy." And I was like, "This is the one time something stuck," and I think that will never happen again. But I did feel like, but there is some truth to that, right? That
Absolutely. No, we have
to
a guy. That's what that's what Hebrews 4 is saying. We got a guy.
Yeah, we've got a
Yeah.
guy that we're not alone. That
Yeah.
our petitions, our desires, our struggles, all these things, our hopes, all these things are brought into God's reality, because the story doesn't stop at the resurrection. It continues the journey back to God and bringing us back to the kingdom, into forward, up, forward. It's an interesting thing because Pharaoh talks about this a lot. That for Calvin, it's up, right? And really is, the 20th century work on the kingdom of God and the pervasion of eschatology into theological imaginations. Really, the thing might be forward. He's ahead of us. He's gone ahead.
Right. Yeah, I like that.
To the coming future. The once and future king.
Yeah, I love that. It's interesting, and this idea came from Tomas Halik. I was reading; he's got a devotional out that came out a couple years ago that I just discovered, and one of the things he talks about, he says one of the saddest verse in the Bible is about the disciples, that they all deserted him. And yet, a couple weeks later, they're all here, minus Jews, of course, and they still don't understand. And I mean, in Acts, they say, "Are you going to establish your kingdom now?" I mean, so they're still confused, and that's still the case. Some 2,000 years later, his people are still confused. We all are, but they were there. I love that. I mean, they had run away,
Yeah.
but they came back, and also I think the ascension is okay. It's time to grow up a little bit, guys. Okay, we're not going to keep doing this. All right, so you need to. It's yours now, and wait for the Holy Spirit. But and I, I can still, because part of them were thinking, okay, well, must be the general resurrection because Jesus is going up. Some apocalyptic Judaism was expecting that for everybody. So I can even see them kind of trying to jump up and go along with them. And you get angels showing up, or they say they're men, two men, and they go, "What are you looking for? What are you doing? What are you doing?" It's not about, I like this idea of he's going forward. It's not about you guys coming up now. It's about, don't be looking for this. It's a new day. And I like that. I think this is it's a in some levels it is an adolescent moment, right, of the early church, and it's a separation, but you never stop loving your kids. You never really leave your children, but it's an opportunity for them to walk into the promises, the things that he's been teaching them, to actually, all right, now let's go do what we've been talking about. And according to, you tie John in with Acts, it's to your advantage that I'm going away, Jesus said. I don't think anyone believed that, but that's the truth.
That's always what I say when I leave a party early. No, it's to your advantage that I leave. That's the way I get out of staying for the
There we
dessert
go.
course. And it's really to
No,
your advantage.
I think it's beautiful. I think this idea of him going ahead of us, and that we got a guy. I think that's I will use that maybe this Sunday, and I will give you credit for that.
It's there. It's all there. Yeah. The second thought I had today about the ascension was from a book I had read today. I finished called "Universality, Identity, Politics" by the great Vermonter Todd McGowan, probably Vermont's best philosopher. I think. I don't know. I haven't taken a census of all of them, but I put him up there pound for pound with any philosopher in Vermont.
Right.
He's great, but in it, he talks about universality is always absence, as always.
Right. Yeah.
That the universal is something that is always aspirational. It's always, and he talks about how any community in which we perfectly belong is kind of identitarian, right? It's sort of a community that we perfectly belong because we've sort of, it's probably not aspirational or universal enough. It depends on othering, right? It depends on sort of who's not there is always part of shaping and signifying who is there. And he talks about universality, and in it there's a passage where he's discussing Marx, and he says to identify universality with the promise of total inclusion is to betray universality by transforming its absence into a presence, even if we defer that presence into the future. So he's saying, even in the ideal sort of proletariat kingdom that Marx envisions, there's this lack of realizing that the kingdom never fully arrives, that the universal never is instantiated in our life together, right? That the universal is always something and the freedom of that, he thinks, is it can kind of get you out of get you unstuck from the constraints of identities that are thrust on you and reductionistic roles you're fit into, and it can actually lead to emancipation and freedom and imagination. But I think about that. I love that because I think part of the way we experience Christ post-ascension is that we deal with the presence of his absence.
Yeah, no, I think that is very much part of the story. But I think another part of it for me too, and I'm going to attribute this to Ed Dowey. I was in his last Calvin lectures at Princeton, so I think this idea comes from his take on Calvin, but I could be wrong. But the idea that the other thing about the ascension is Jesus goes somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's a sense where I've never been a big cosmic Christ person, and there's parts of the ubiquity, notion of our Lutheran friends that is appealing to me, but I think I probably am more of Calvin on this than the Lutherans, and this idea, and it gets back to anthropology, because it gives us a sense of what's ahead of us, that whatever the kingdom is, whatever heaven is, whatever it means to be with God forever, there is a spatial dimension to it. There's a sense where there's an embodied Christ who goes somewhere, and that not only is that about the coming of the Holy Spirit, but it's an important part of Christology, and Christology is always also about anthropology when it's done well, right? I think, and well, it's about anthropology when it's done poorly as well. I think that's the Arian thing, is bad anthropology. But I think that's important. I think that, I'm doing a funeral this Sunday afternoon, so I'm preaching on the Ascension in the morning and doing a funeral. And this was a wonderful man. I didn't know him, but he was a pillar of the church, and it's really interesting to me. I don't think I've done lots of funerals, and I've done a lot of really, all kinds of tragedies, untimely deaths, but I've never had more conversations about a funeral in my life than this one. And I think it's partially the details are really important to this family, because it's still part of the holding on and letting go. And I think it's a powerful thing to think about, that everything that we will say about this man, and I think there's going to be a cast of thousands speaking about him, all this is true. And what a wonderful thing, what a wonderful legacy. But the hope we have is not in this wonderful legacy this man has, but that he's somewhere now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that, to me, is part of the power of the ascension. When I'm, whatever my afterlife thought is pretty undeveloped in so many ways, but this, to me, this is one of those things I say yes to by faith, that is good for my soul.
Yeah, I mean, what does Shakespeare say, right? The undiscovered country, but it's discovered.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a place
yeah.
that's been explored now, and in which our stories become part of that story.
The pioneer of our faith.
Amen. Thanks, everybody. Have a blessed Ascension Day.
Thank you, too. Good to be with you, Scott. Peace,
Good
everyone.
to see you.